What in the world are we doing to hold Putin accountable? That's Congressman Quigley, frustrated, furious, calling out Secretary of State Marco Rubio for what he sees as weakness and inaction. While Russia continues its brutal assault, mass graves are found, and civilians are kidnapped, Quigley wants answers. Why does it seem like Putin is escaping real punishment?
Just in terms of Ukraine, my concern is that when you equate these two powers at the negotiating table, it does seem to diminish the fact that Russia was the aggressor, and having been there 5 times since the war started, stood at Bucha at the mass grave and heard accounts of rape and murder and the kidnapping of kids. I just don't hear the administration talking about holding Putin accountable for these things as part of these discussions. And finally recognizing that Putin doesn't seem to have any reason to negotiate in good faith because he has, what, 4 to 6 times the manpower? He treats his troops like cannon fodder. And I think he probably recognized this is an administration that will do another supplemental. So what in the world are we doing to hold him accountable and to actually force him into negotiating in good faith? And again, not rewarding him with de facto land that he currently occupies. And what is it? We're punishing him that he can't have additional land? So what is it we are doing to actually hold him accountable and force him to negotiate in good faith beyond really stern tweets?
Yeah, on the second point, those are the details that would have to be worked out in any negotiation. And as I said, he'll have to make concessions, and so will the Ukrainian side. I don't know what those are. We're not going to predetermine what those are. That's why we want him to enter into direct negotiations. We honestly continue to believe we're open to any peace deal, but we think it's very difficult to enter peace negotiations without a ceasefire because something blows up somewhere, some attack happens in the interim, and the negotiations fall apart. On your first question, listen, I sense, and I think we all do, what you're arguing here, okay, about the imbalance in the relationship, by who's the invasion, things of that nature. But the bottom line is this war's been going on for 3 years, and there was no end in sight. And the only way you can end it is you got to be able to bring both sides to the table. And we feel like the president, we know the president was in a unique position to be able to bring both sides to a table and be able to talk to both sides. It may ultimately not work out. It may ultimately not work out, but we have to at least try to make it work. And I think it's the same position, for example, the Vatican has adopted. There's a lot of pressure on the Vatican to condemn the Russians for their, but the way the Vatican is viewed it is, unless we're able to talk to both sides, we have no hope whatsoever of trying to force a negotiation.
If there's no impetus on Putin to do anything, he won't do anything, and he will be rewarded. This is more like Chamberlain than someone who's trying to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Chamberlain didn't win a Nobel Peace Prize conceding this and saying, well, this war could be going on for a long time. FDR didn't say, this war's been going on a long time. You know, we're not going to engage and involve. We're just going to see if both sides can work this out. Aggressors like a tyrant like Putin aren't going to listen to goodwill.
Well, I understand. I think the goal here is to reach a ceasefire so they can negotiate a broader deal that's fair and, frankly, sustainable. If it's an unsustainable peace, meaning if it's an unfair, unbalanced peace, it won't be sustainable. And our goal is to get them to that point. I hope we're successful because the alternative is more people will die.
I agree.
What you just heard was Congressman Quigley pressing Senator Rubio with one of the most important questions that often gets buried beneath the noise of global politics. What are we actually doing to hold Vladimir Putin accountable? Because behind all the diplomatic language and policy talk, this isn't just about geopolitics. It's about human lives. Quigley's frustration is rooted in the reality that Russia's invasion of Ukraine wasn't just a territorial dispute. It was an act of brutality that left mass graves, shattered families, and an entire nation fighting for survival. When Quigley says he's been to Ukraine 5 times since the war began, he's speaking from first-hand experience, not from intelligence briefings or second-hand reports. He's seen the devastation, the destruction, the aftermath of what the world has called war crimes. And what he's asking Rubio, and by extension the entire U.S. administration, is simple. How can anyone talk about peace, fairness, or negotiation when there's been no accountability for those crimes? How can there be a ceasefire built on justice if one side still faces no real consequences for invading another sovereign nation? But listen carefully to Rubio's response. He couches his answer in the language of realism. Both sides must make concessions, a ceasefire is needed before negotiations. On the surface, that sounds diplomatic, but Quigley catches what's really being implied, a dangerous moral equivalence. Because when you tell both sides to meet halfway, you erase who started the war. You blur the line between the aggressor and the victim. And that's where the heart of this exchange lies. Quigley's outrage isn't just emotional, it's moral. It's about the principle that you cannot negotiate justice when one side still has blood on its hands. And this isn't just about Ukraine. This is about the credibility of global accountability itself. If Putin can invade a country, kill thousands, occupy land, and still be treated like a legitimate negotiating partner, what message does that send to every other authoritarian watching? It tells them that force works, that diplomacy can be weaponized to buy time and secure gains through violence. Quigley understands this, that appeasement disguised as diplomacy isn't peace, it's procrastination. And history has shown us what happens when world leaders mistake the two. He even invokes Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler, not as a dramatic flourish, but as a chilling reminder that aggressors only respect resistance, not restraint. When leaders choose comfort over confrontation, they don't prevent war, they prolong it. And that's exactly what Quigley is warning about here, the risk that the West, in its fatigue, will confuse ending the war with ending the responsibility. This is the kind of exchange that should make every viewer think critically about what justice looks like in international politics. Because the uncomfortable truth is, accountability for someone like Putin can't just come through sanctions or diplomatic isolation. It requires sustained, coordinated political will. And if that's missing, then no amount of negotiation will bring real peace, only temporary silence before the next explosion. So when Quigley asks, what in the world are we doing to hold him accountable, he's not just challenging Rubio. He's challenging the entire framework of global power that too often rewards aggression with attention and punishes victims with delay. The takeaway here is bigger than Ukraine. It's about whether the world still has the moral courage to stand up to authoritarianism in any form, or whether we've accepted that power, not principle, decides the future. What do you think? Is the U.S. genuinely pursuing justice, or are we setting into a pattern of polite appeasement while calling it diplomacy? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Left Lens, where we break down the power plays behind every headline and connect them to the real human stories beneath.